afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Combined Authority meeting, the first one since the summer. It's great to see everybody again today in person, and hopefully we will be able to retain some sort of physical presence getting together. Before we do start the formalities of the meeting, I just need to run through some procedural matters. This meeting will be broadcast live to the Combined Authority website and available for subsequent viewing, and by entering this room you are consenting to be filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for filming purposes. We also have a number of members participating remotely via Teams. For those members, if you do wish to speak, please raise your virtual hand. Can members and officers please ensure that you press the microphone before speaking and turn it off afterwards? And finally, can everyone ensure their phone is switched to silent, please? Before I do provide some the main part of the agenda, I think it's only right that we announce that we lost, very sadly, some elected members over the recent weeks. So if I could just acknowledge who they were. Councillor Ros Groves, who represented Anfield Ward in Liverpool, Councillor Tim Jeeves, who represented Clubmore in Liverpool, and Councillor Harry Howard, who represented Halton Castle in Halton, of course, and was a long-serving member of the Transport Committee. They were all dedicated servants to their communities, and I think it's only right that we pause for a moment to remember them as a mark of respect from ourselves. We now have a minute's silence, and Jill will let us know when that's concluded. Thank you. Item 1 is apologies for absence. Trudy?
Hi, Metro Mayor. I haven't received any apologies for absence today.
Anyone else want to notify us of any absences? No. Item 2 then is declarations of interest. And Jill?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've received a declaration of interest from Councillor Morgan in relation to items 19 and 23, the Bramley Moor Stadium, and the nature of the interest is that Councillor Morgan is a season ticket holder for Everton Football Club. He will not be participating in the discussion or those items.
We're all tempted, aren't we, to say something, but I won't. I'll bite my lip on this particular one. Okay, then if we can go to item 3, which is the minutes of the previous Combined Authority meeting held on the 23rd of July 2021. Can I ask if they are agreed, please? Item 4 is a summary of what I've been doing since the last meeting, and I will try and get through this as quickly as possible because I know it's a packed agenda today, but there's just some strategic updates first. And of course, we had the cabinet reshuffle over the last few days, and I've written to those new cabinet ministers for the likes of DCMS, for education and for levelling up, to request meetings so that we can fully explain how our city region is pressing ahead in many cases with creating that thriving economy and a fairer society in the city region. Our government relations team have been pulling together a submission to the comprehensive spending review, really important moment for us all. I think this is a real opportunity, perhaps one of the last that we may have, for us to get some big chunks of capital, which obviously we'll use to deliver the London-style transport system for instance, and to tackle climate emergency, both of which form part of my manifesto. And as you know, COP26 is approaching fast, and we'll have an item on that, and Councillor Baines will talk us through some of the highlights. But we've pulled together genuinely a fantastic programme of events as a North West delegation to show our strengths on the likes of tidal and hydrogen and housing retrofit, for instance. The Liverpool City region is leading the way in decarbonising things, for instance, like our energy-intensive industries, but again, we'll have more of that later. This weekend, of course, is the Labour Party conference in Brighton, and I'll be heading down there to promote what we're doing in all parts of the city region, on the likes of our Fair Work Charter, our Fair Employment Charter, on apprenticeships, on opportunity for all, on transport, and a whole host of different things. And look, likewise, if I was invited to the Tory Party conference, I'd do the same there, or the Lib Dems, or anybody else. We need people to understand what's happening here in the city region better, and perhaps that comes before party politics. In other news, it's been a really busy summer, and I've spent time doing numerous events. For example, in July, but myself and Andy Burnham joined our newly elected Mayor of West Yorkshire, Tracy Braben, as she launched her Fair Work Charter for West Yorkshire, and that builds on what myself and Andy have been doing with Greater Manchester. They've got a good employment charter and our very own Fair Employment Charter in the city region, which we launched back in February. And I said at her event that working across the north as far as employment is concerned is absolutely vital if we're to get more employers paying, for instance, the real living wage, so that we can clamp down on insecure work and 0 hours contracts, offering a real seat at the table for unions, and giving our staff opportunities to progress and thrive, and of course also encouraging people from underrepresented groups. Presenting, I think, what is a united front is in the true spirit of devolution. It's us as Metro Mayors doing things for our communities that a Conservative government can't or won't. And in keeping with the spirit of my first mayoral term, I'm also ensuring that I get out and about across the 6 districts of the city region. I've met some fantastic charities just recently. For instance, I met one on the Wirral who helped men with mental health throughout the lockdowns. I visited a new housing development while I was there using modern methods of construction, and something again that we're leading on in the city region in many aspects. I also went to Interim in Halton with, I think it was the government minister who was there at the time, Mike, and we sold to her the transformational opportunities of our HiNet project. I think Councillor Wharton will concur with this, but it's probably the most exciting thing that's coming across any of our desks at the moment, and really transformational for the whole city region. I also, on that similar vein, visited Pilkingtons. I was just saying previously, we went with Councillor Baines to St Helens to see the hydrogen fuel switching trials. In other words, instead of methane, they were using hydrogen. And Pilkingtons completed that trial successfully. It was the first in the world at trying large-scale glass manufacture, with the furnace operating 100% on hydrogen, and it was for a prolonged period as well. So again, something that I'm absolutely certain we'll be seeing a lot more of. In Sefton, I celebrated with apprenticeship graduates in Southport. I think we should do more of this. We should celebrate success more, and I think it's only right that we mark the achievements of those people who take technical qualifications similarly to we do with academia. I also visited Crosby and Formby with Bill Esserson and loads of other things that we did there over the day or so. I went with Councillor Morgan to Knowsley just last week, where I showed him the ropes of actually how to lay bricks and not the mess that he made of it. But that was for Shakespeare North, and you should see the progress of what's happening, not just with that site. I'm sure Councillor Morgan will fill the gaps in, but the surrounding area. It's really acted as a catalyst for wider regeneration. I'm going to be talking about one of those projects in Liverpool later on. There's also lots and lots of invites constantly from organisations in Liverpool, and I went to a community environment funded project in Toxteth last week. I don't know if you saw it, but it was an absolutely fascinating guy who was building beehives and then harvesting the honey and all that sort of stuff. Brilliant, teaching kids about things like the ecosystem and how biodiversity is really important. You know, without the bees, they can't pollinate the plants, and then the plants die and all that sort of stuff. And the kids were fascinating. So hopefully more of those engagements in the next few weeks. So we'll leave that there because we are desperately short of time, but there's lots of other things. And go on to item 5, which John's going to talk us through. John Fogarty, who's the Executive Director for Corporate Services. And it is about our revised revenue budget, which we'll consider. Over to you, John.
Thank you, Metro Mayor and members. Members will recall that when we set the current year's budget, it was probably almost 12 months ago, and it was very much based on the situation as it was 12 months ago. And as again, you'll recall, that was when the nation was still in a position of considerable uncertainty related to the pandemic. But in particular, levels of revenue on transport services, public transport services, the situation was particularly stark. So as a result, the budget was set basically as a continuation of the 2021, if you like, the COVID budget. But the Metro Mayor, you'll recall, committed to revising that budget during the year once greater certainty emerged around the future situation. So we've undertaken that now, and this report presents the most significant revisions to that. And as you would expect from what I've said previously, that they relate very much to transport services in particular. And bus is to the fore in that. The bus team have worked really hard with operators and with DFT, and the Transport Committee as well has been involved. But we've taken steps to reduce our exposure to risk and to increase confidence and patronage on the bus network. And also, we have to say, secure further assistance from government as well, which has been helpful. So as a result, the worst case scenario that we planned for last year hasn't transpired. And that means that we don't need to deploy our resources, our reserves, to the extent that we originally anticipated doing so. That said, the situation on bus and rail remains very far from normal, and we're very much not out of the woods yet in terms of those situations. And our exposure to risk from public transport remains quite high, and that will obviously influence the 22-23 budget process. The other significant change within it relates to rolling stock and delays in the programme from last year that were to do with COVID again, and in particular travel restrictions, has had a knock-on effect on payments this year, but that is purely an issue around profiling of spend. That will catch up. You'll also see that there's a big significant grant that's been that's reflected in the revised budget that goes through the Combined Authority that we just didn't know about when we set the budget this time last. When you set the budget last year. Other than that, generally the assumptions within the budget have held more or less true. There are some smaller variations up and down, as you'd expect, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, John, and thanks to you and the team for all the hard work in preparing this and mitigating some of the issues in the budget that we had from last year, although there is still a structural issue that we need to deal with in future budgets. But it's great to see the progress that's being made. The report also highlights that during the pandemic, the likes of public transport kept our city region going. They didn't stop during the pandemic, so I thought it was an apposite moment to congratulate our own staff who were there throughout, and also all of the transport workers and the providers for their efforts over that period as well. Are there any questions for John on the budget? No? Okay, can we agree the recommendations on page 15, please? Item 6 is the next report, which presents the external auditors, Mazars' annual statement of account. And John, again, is going to take us through a few key highlights from Mazars' findings.
Thank you. As you'll be aware, the accounts, the statement of accounts are incredibly important. They're what gives you as members of the Combined Authority, but also our stakeholders, all of our stakeholders, assurance and confidence that the financial information and the governance arrangements within the Combined Authority are sound. We hope that we will be presenting the final audited accounts here today. However, the accounts, while in a state of practical completion, have yet to be tied up formally, and this is due to a technical issue related to a third party that's not within our control. Aside from that, the draft audit completion letter that's included Appendix 1 and is provided by our auditors, Mazars, anticipates what they would call an unqualified opinion on the accounts, which is a clean bill of health, if you like, and have commented also on the very high standard of accounts and papers and working practices within the Combined Authority. Once this is formally complete, we will bring this back to members and also invite Mazars to present their conclusions to you themselves. And I'm happy to answer any questions on these draft accounts.
Anything on that particular issue? No, again, John, thanks to yourself and staff for doing such high quality work that's been identified by the auditors. Can we agree the recommendations are set out on page 25, please? Item 7 is SIF, and it's a quarterly update on the Strategic Investment Fund. Councillor Williamson, I think you're going to introduce the report, and then we'll hand over to Aileen Jones, who's the Interim Executive Director of Strategic Commissioning and Delivery, and she's going to take us through the details of that report. Is that okay?
Mr Mayor, this report updates the Combined Authority on progress with dispersing the Strategic Investment Fund. It also makes some significant recommendations regarding extending the breadth and scope of our support for small and medium-sized businesses across the city region. As everyone will be aware, many businesses have been significantly impacted by the last 18 months. Small and medium-sized businesses are a vital part of our economy, and it's important that the Combined Authority provides the support it can to them. This report recommends that we increase such support both to ensuring ongoing resilience and also to expanding the funding available for those businesses with the ambition to grow. And may I invite Aileen Jones to take us through this and the wider updates set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. As you mentioned, this report sets out progress in investing the Strategic Investment Fund to the end of Q1. Around £17 million of funds were dispersed in the first quarter of the year. In addition, the report makes a number of recommendations for members to consider. The first is to apply the general one-pot approach to the Getting Building Fund, such that any projects not completed by the 31st of March deadline can be finalised. The Combined Authority is applying its usual over-programming approach to aim to disperse all of the Getting Building Fund's money by the end of March. Secondly, the report asks to allocate the next tranche of funds to the Flexible Growth Fund, that is £4 million, with a further option of an additional £2 million. As members may recall, the original approval was for £20 million to be allocated to support SME growth, with an initial tranche of £5 million applied. Take-up was slow because of the unforeseen impact of COVID. However, demand for this funding is now increasing significantly. Thirdly, the report asks to extend the duration of the business resilience consultancy being delivered by the Growth Platform. This is within the original budget allocated. And finally, the report notes the minor changes to the projects approved by officers under delegated powers. Thank you.
Anything for Aileen on that issue? No, I think it's our intentions at a future meeting to actually bring some of those projects to life that we're funding and to get some presentations from different organisations. Can we agree the recommendations as set out on page 197, please? 18 is SIF again, but this is something that Councillor Williamson is going to take us through.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Combined Authority is committed to making the Liverpool City region a stronger, cleaner and fairer city region where nobody is left behind. A dynamic and growing business space that provides good quality jobs for people in every community is central to this commitment. The paper seeks approval for £600,000 of grant funding over 5 years to the Merseyside Special Investment Fund, a not-for-profit funder which manages the Liverpool City Region Finance Hub. The hub provides a free and impartial service for small businesses seeking to access external funding to grow. The SIF funds will match funding contributions from MSIF and Growth Platform and allow an expansion to the service. The hub primarily serves the micro and small businesses market, where it is typically uneconomical for the private sector advisory community to act. The hub will also promote awareness of the types of funding available for micro and small businesses. The hub's specialist advice will significantly increase SMEs' ability to access and secure funding, enabling them to create local jobs whilst complementing other business support provided by chambers of commerce and other business support organisations. Indeed, the project has been shaped through significant engagement and consultation with Liverpool City Region business support organisations, funders and the professional services community. Demand for the hub's services has increased in recent months, with the first half of 2021 seeing the largest number of inquiries since the hub's establishment in 2017. The additional funding will allow the hub to engage 1,000 SMEs annually and provide a more intensive and effective service for its clients. On this basis, I commend the recommendations to approve the proposed approach and the funding request, Mr Mayor.
Any questions for Councillor Williamson? No? Okay, then, if there aren't any questions, can we agree the recommendations as set out on page 217, please? Item 9 is about Freeports, and the report asks for us to agree the outline business case, which was submitted, will be submitted to government shortly. Asif Hamid, who's the chair of the LEP, is going to take us through that report.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this paper is to update members on the Liverpool City Region Freeport designation process, the next stage of this, which is an outline business case to government. As members will be aware, in March, the Chancellor announced the Liverpool City Region Freeport bid had been selected to progress to the next stage of Freeport designation. This was a significant announcement for our city region, as the Freeport will be a key driver for economic development activity. It will attract high-value investment, support growth and employment, and help in regenerating communities through industry, innovation and collaboration. Importantly, it also sends out a message about our potential and contribution to a post-Brexit world. Freeports are a signature HM Treasury policy, and Freeport designation further enhances government's view of our investment potential. We know that Freeport areas are likely to benefit from further collaboration and investment by government as key areas of regeneration and redevelopment. The initial bid early this year was just the beginning of a designation process before Freeport strategy is confirmed. We need to work with government in producing both an outline business case and a full business case. It's the outline business case that is the subject of this paper today. It's been a considerable collaborative effort to produce this that has included CA and Growth Platform colleagues working closely with local authorities, the LEP and its sector boards, industry bodies, universities, further education, colleges, infrastructure owners and operators, and the wider local business community. The level of support cannot be understated, and I want to thank the partners across the city region for their input. Therefore, the content and proposals within the outline business case in Appendix 1 are based on previously agreed principles and significant input from local authorities and public and private sector partners. We're working hard to ensure that all local authorities, the business and residents benefit from the LCR Freeport. The Freeport will act as a hook to market the whole city region for inward investment opportunities and provide dedicated investment in skills, innovation and net zero projects. Following submission of the outline business case, the next stage will see us work collectively to develop and submit a more detailed but full business case by the 10th of December. Successful submission and approval of the full business case will release significant seed funding of between 25 and 45 million to invest in Freeport sites and projects across the city region. I therefore commend this paper to you and ask the members note the progress that has been made to date, endorse the outlined business case, and note the continued hard work and effort that is going on at the moment in time, and now will need to take place before the full business case in December. Thank you.
Thanks, Asif. Good progress, hasn't it? Anybody got any questions for Asif on Freeport? No, if not, can we agree the recommendations that are set out on page 235, please? Item 10, getting ahead of myself. Item 10 is the key route network, and the report seeks approval to add 3 additional routes to the existing KRN. And Councillor Robinson, you're going to take us through this report briefly.
Yeah, very briefly, and just as you just said, Steve, it's obviously seeking approval for a recommendation from the City Region's KRN officer group, which is comprised of highways officers from across all 6 districts, to add 3 new routes into the key route network approach, which in totality is about 4.5 miles of road additionally into the KRN network. All of them are in St Helens and more towards the east of the St Helens borough as well, and they are the A572, the A573 and the A599.
Okay. Any questions? No? Okay. Can we agree the recommendations are set out on page 243, please? 11 is a report which relates also to the key route network and asks us to approve the Combined Authority's response to the government's consultation, which could shape the management of the city region's future key route network. And again, Councillor Robinson, you're going to take us through this report.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yes, the Government's Department for Transport is conducting a consultation in the governance and operation of key route networks in combined authorities like our own. Obviously, officers from across the 6 districts have engaged quite heavily in pulling together this consensus response to the consultation, which comprises of 13 questions. But fundamentally, the basis of our response is that local is best, and these routes should remain in local authority ownership and control as they currently are, as we think that's the best way to operate the network and work very closely with local communities accordingly. And we don't believe that the TfL model that the government is proposing is the right one for us.
Any questions for Councillor Robinson on that one? Can we agree the recommendation set out on page 254, please? And to complete the hat-trick, item 12, Liam, you're going to take us through the draft outline for the City Region's Bus Service Improvement Plan, BSIP.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think this is much more exciting, actually, with my anorak on my back, of course. But obviously, the government is going through the process of requiring every area to pull together a bus service improvement plan, very much as part of their approach to what they call Bus Back Better, which is the government's national bus strategy. And in order for us to access funding, successor funding following the pandemic, we need to pull together an ambitious and very stretching plan, because there is, in totality, the government tell us, up to £3 billion of funding available for the bus sector across the country, and obviously we want to get as big a slice of that as is possible for our city region. I think all of us know just how important our bus network is, particularly in a city region where more than 1/3 of our residents don't have access to a private car, and that the bus network is the majority form of public transport that people use. And particularly when we look against the backdrop of the climate emergency, there is no way we can address the climate emergency, the air quality crisis, or frankly build back our local economies if we don't put public transport, and particularly buses, very much at the heart of our proposals going forward. So some of the things that we are putting in our submission and developing accordingly include some significant bus priority measures, very much building on that green route proposition that we brought to members previously. Also, how we can enhance the network. We don't just want good services in the middle of the day, we want them early in the morning, late at night, to support shift workers, and particularly across the weekend. We also know that fares, frankly, are too high at this moment in time, and if we are wanting to get bums back on seats and provide, quite frankly, economic social justice, we need to have a much cheaper fare proposition accordingly. We also know, as I mentioned before, about how we tackle the climate emergency. In delivering your vision, Steve, of a zero-emissions bus fleet, we want to go much further than just the 20 hydrogen vehicles that we've already ordered, and we think there's an opportunity for government to help us fund more zero-emission buses right across the region. We're equally very ambitious about the way that the bus operates and the way that buses are perceived. We actually think that there's ways in which we can be much more modern and push towards what could be called bus rapid transit. I think was referred in your manifesto, Steve, as trackless tram initiatives, something that is high quality road infrastructure that buses run on with a high quality vehicle to match, and we've already identified a number of potential routes for that to be rolled out. We also know that the most successful transport networks globally have a uniform brand and identity. Frankly, we don't want a situation where passengers have to squint down the road to see is it a stagecoach and a Riva bus. People should be able to get on the next vehicle because it's the same standard, high quality, and very much under that Metro brand. Also an opportunity to support and supplement some of the services in Halton. And the final aspect, as part of our kind of proposition to government, is to gain some flexible funding for us to push ahead with buses reform. I think all of us understand that bus deregulation has not been of any benefit to our region and beyond. And obviously we're going through the very detailed process of identifying the right reform model, be that the current emerging leading option of franchising or any enhanced partnership option as well. So all of that forms a very ambitious and stretching proposition that we are still developing. Timescales are tight with government that it needs to be submitted by the end of October, and when we have a finalised proposition I will make sure it's circulated amongst leaders for final comment to make sure that we're happy in what we submit back to government in the autumn.
Excellent. Any questions for Liam on that issue? If not, can we agree the recommendations that are set out on page 273, please? 13 is obviously the pandemic demonstrated more than ever the importance of our voluntary community sector, and the report seeks approval to provide £480,000 to the sector. And Councillor Williamson has been leading on this, so you're going to take us through the report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm delighted to introduce this report, which proposes funding of almost £500,000, as you've just said, to support our fantastic voluntary, community and faith sector. We know that local voluntary, community and faith groups have been at the heart of our COVID response, supporting some of our most vulnerable residents during times of unprecedented need. The voluntary and community sector has always been a vital partner in providing a wide range of care and support to vulnerable people. They have a strong history of working with communities to tackle inequality, deliver positive change and helping to make communities stronger. We want to make sure that this incredibly valuable role is supported as we move forward into recovery planning. We know that sustainable funding is always a challenge for the sector, and the lack of long-term investment impacts its ability to plan beyond the immediate term. To help tackle this, the Metro Mayor has committed to the creation of a sectoral resilience and capacity fund. The funding proposal in this report is a first step towards this. It will make a real difference to people who need it most. It will support volunteers, digital inclusion, community wellbeing and improve mental health. Activity that will make a real difference to people's lives and help build lasting change. Thank you.
Excellent. And of course, we recognised, didn't we, the fantastic efforts of our voluntary community sector during the pandemic. The LCR Cares funding, £2.5 million, that went to every single part of the city region, was distributed primarily through the voluntary community sector. So just imagine if we didn't have that as a resource for us, and this, I think, will go some way to recognise what they've done, but also for them to be able to provide further support to our communities. So if there aren't any additional comments, can we agree the recommendations are set out on page 279, please? 14 is another one of those where we're being asked to accept £465,900 from the Health Foundation to deliver the Health and Employment Integration Programme Are we happy to accept that money? Yes. Can we therefore agree the recommendations as set out on page 285? Okay, 15 is in a similar sort of vein. The report seeks the approval to accept an EU grant. Yes, an EU grant for the Liverpool City Region High Growth Programme. It is £504,829.76. I made the 76 pence up because I just think those figures are just, I'll put the 76 pence in myself. So are we happy to accept that? 16 is the Northwest COP campaign, and the report summarises our approach to delivering the activities linked to that international conference, which is taking place in Glasgow in November. Councillor Baines, you're going to take us through this.
Thank you, Chair. The 26th International Conference of the Parties, better known as COP26, will take place in Glasgow in November. Previous COPs have led to landmark decisions, including the Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Agreement, and COP26 will be another major milestone for international collaboration on the climate emergency. The report before us is required in order to accept funding from the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy in our capacity as the accountable body for the North West Energy Hub. £195,000 has been provided from BEIS to support the domestic COP26 campaign across the North West, and match funding is required to leverage this. Chair, as you know, we're leading the way here in the Liverpool City region on this agenda, and in the coming weeks we'll be showcasing our work and ambitions and participating in COP26 in a number of ways. Within the Liverpool City region, the Local Enterprise Partnership are hosting a national electric bus event in New Brighton on the 1st of October. We'll hold a dedicated climate event that will take place at St George's Hall in October, which will showcase the City region ambitions and achievements. And we'll host a regional green zone event in the Heath in Runcorn focused on clean, green energy production. This is in addition to the work we're already doing through our Community Environment Fund with our hydrogen bus fleet and through our support for the innovative, game-changing HyNet project, Glass Futures and much more. In Glasgow, Chair, as portfolio holder, I will attend and speak at a number of events, including hosting a dinner to discuss our world-leading Mersey Tidal project, and also an event in partnership with Glass Futures, for which site work has begun in St Helens, a transformational and world-leading project to decarbonise the glass industry. The Liverpool City region successfully led for the North West on securing a formal participation event in the COP26 Green Zone, and yourself, Metro Mayor, and other regional leaders will host a panel discussion on youth involvement in the climate agenda within the COP26 Green Zone, and you will also join Liverpool University, I'm told, in the delegation to the COP Blue Zone, where there's an opportunity to directly speak to world leaders about the importance of the climate emergency, which colleagues will recall this CA declared ahead of any other. The detailed itinerary for COP26 is not yet complete, but what I can tell colleagues is that we will continue to actively seek out opportunities to ensure that our city region is represented at a senior level in international discussions in the most effective way. We're making great progress and we'll continue to work together to achieve our net zero carbon ambitions, to develop and deliver world-leading projects such as the hydrogen trials at Pilkington you mentioned earlier, Chair, Glass Futures, HyNet, Mersey Tidal and more. And throughout the necessary and urgent journey to a net zero economy, we will do everything we can to support local businesses and residents in a way that is effective, fair, and which leaves nobody and no borough behind. Thanks, Chair.
Excellent. Sounds a really exciting programme, doesn't it? And we've been in constant dialogue with the president of COP, Alex Sharma, about the part that we can play on behalf of the UK, from the Northwest, but also from a Liverpool City region perspective. And actually, governments are very excited about what's happening in our area. So we need to be pressing forward, really, with lots of the innovation that's happening here. Any questions for Councillor Baines? Can we therefore agree the recommendations set out on page 297, please? Item 17 is a report that seeks to establish portfolio holder boards, which will enable the early input into policy development and decision making. And we've seen the benefit of this in areas like Councillor Morgan's portfolio in housing, Councillor Robinson with transport and one or two others. But we want that to be the standard across the whole of the city region and across the portfolios. Is everybody supportive of that? Can we therefore agree the recommendation set out on page 303? Item 18 is various appointments and governance updates. Jill Cool, the Monitoring Officer, is going to take us through this part of the report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There are 3 recommendations on this report. The first recommendation relates to a nomination we've received from St Helens Council asking us to appoint Councillor Trish Long onto the Overview and Scrutiny Committee to replace Councillor McDonald. The second recommendation is to ask you to appoint an independent member to the Audit and Governance Committee. We already have one independent member, but it will strengthen our independence and scrutiny of our Audit and Governance Committee arrangements if we're able to add a second member. And the third recommendation relates to a staff officer, Dr Jones, asking for her to be appointed as a director onto 2 of our subsidiary companies related to the Combined Authority. I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Any questions or clarification required? No, it's fairly straightforward, isn't it? So if we agree the recommendations on page 307, please. Item 19 is a rather chunky item for us. Councillor Graham Morgan is just leaving the chamber. He's declared his interest, and members of the Combined Authority are being asked to approve a package which is £45 million in financial support to the new Bramley Moor Stadium and associated regeneration in North Liverpool. And this Part 1 report specifically addresses the proposed grant of £15 million. We will consider further the loan element of that later on in the agenda. But our grant will support the development of public infrastructure and heritage preservation around the stadium. But this whole proposal is not about football. It's sometimes hijacked, certainly on social media, when we announced this a week or so ago. It's not about football. It's about the regeneration of an area and about jobs. So the project stands as one of the most significant regeneration projects our region has seen in more than a decade, and it'll be a major catalyst for regeneration and renaissance in an area that's been crying out for investment for decades. Indeed, the stadium project itself is projected to create over 8,000 jobs during construction. Together with the wider regeneration, it's estimated it will create over 15,000 jobs. And it will also deliver significant social value. And I know Councillor Williamson will want to talk more on that as our champion. Everton FC are making significant commitments, both in terms of employment in the project, the social value that I'm sure you're going to address in a second, Councillor Williamson, but also around the ongoing regeneration of Goodison Park. We will need to hold Everton, of course, to those commitments, and they will be enshrined in our funding agreement. The challenge for the Combined Authority will be to work with all of our stakeholders to make sure the opportunity for regeneration is maximised. And Councillor Morgan has consistently declared an interest and has taken no role in any of the discussions that we've had on this particular issue due to him being an Everton season ticket holder. Ordinarily, in Graham's absence, Knowsley Council would be represented by the Deputy Leader, Councillor Louise Harbour, but unfortunately, Councillor Harbour is unavailable to join us today. So we'll have to proceed without any direct input from Knowsley. But given the significance of these proposals, Councillor Harbour has asked for me to make clear that she would have voted in favour of the proposals if she had been able to join us today. She was particularly keen for me to make that clear in case Knowsley's absence was somehow spun that they didn't support the project. They are in fact fully in favour of the proposals set out in this report. And I'm sure that, like me, you appreciate that, Councillor Harbour, for making Knowsley's position abundantly clear, not just to us, but to external bodies outside. So with that said, Councillor Williamson, do you want to add anything in regard to social value?
Well, thank you, Mr Mayor, and as you've said, it's a really important project for the city region, for the job and regeneration opportunities it will bring. In addition, the report sets out an approach which commits Everton to delivering wider social value. And as we go forward with our regeneration schemes, I think social value has to be at the heart of everything that we deliver, and Everton are certainly doing that with this. During the building of the stadium, Everton and its partners will deliver a framework of social value activities, particularly in the areas of employment. You've just mentioned how many jobs will be created, guaranteed jobs and good jobs for our residents across the city region. Training, education and skills. Everton in the community will work with local residents to ensure they have the skills needed to access the jobs at the stadium. Health and well-being, including support for mental health awareness, which I think we've all agreed coming out of the pandemic is one of our main priorities. There will be detailed targets that are set out in the report later in the agenda. Further value will be added through the delivery of the Goodison Legacy project, and that's the project to regenerate Everton's current ground after they move, which is vital because they're not just moving to a new ground and abandoning their old one. So we have a kind of double bonus there, don't we really? Everton, its construction partner, and Everton in the community have signed up to specific targets and to working with the Combined Authority to make sure we, as a region, get the most out of this project. And I would therefore, Mr Mayor, like to add my support to the recommendations.
Thank you. Aileen, anything to add?
There's just the feedback from our external investment panel, which met last Thursday. As members will know, the panel is an advisory panel of the Combined Authority, and this was the second time that the panel considered the project in detail, reflecting the high level of scrutiny and challenge involved in the development of this funding proposal. There was three main observations of the panel that I'll flag. It noted the modest CA investment compared to the overall size of the project and recognised the potential benefits that it could bring. The panel were assured by evidence in the number of construction jobs and apprenticeships anticipated to be created in the Liverpool City region by the project, and that this expectation would be reflected in our legal agreements. Secondly, they also recognised that Everton had expressed a commitment to the delivery of social value, as Councillor Williamson has touched on, and noted the strong track record of Everton in the community in delivering such benefits. They recommended that the Combined Authority ensured that these social value commitments, as well as delivery of the Goodison Legacy project, are explicitly included in legal agreements to be entered into between the CA and Everton. And finally, they also advised the CA allocate sufficient resources to both ensure Everton meet their commitments and also to working with stakeholders to maximise the future regeneration potential of the project. Thank you.
Thanks, Aileen. And just to address the sort of whataboutery that was all over social media a week or so ago, people were saying, well, what about our area? What about putting it into X, Y or Z? We look at every single application that comes before the Combined Authority on the merit of the application. And so if some of those other schemes do come before us, they will be given due consideration and due diligence, the same as this scheme, this application for funding has. So if there's nothing else from anyone to add, no? Can we agree the recommendations set out on 311, please? Graham can come back in. 20 is the procurement of air quality sensors linked to traffic signals. And Councillor Robinson is going to take us through this.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'm really pleased to be bringing this forward today, because when the Combined Authority established the Air Quality Task Force, one of the many recommendations we brought back is looking at the potential for the Combined Authority working with all 6 districts to collectively procure a uniform approach to air quality monitoring across the region, because each of our 6 districts were doing some really good stuff, but was doing something slightly different in each locality, and we were always very conscious that if we're actually going to tackle this problem collectively, we really need a kind of a granular understanding of the issue in real time. So what we're bringing forward today is the procurement of 37 near real-time air quality sensors across all 6 districts. So 10 will be in Liverpool, 7 will be in Sefton, 5 will be in Wirral, 5 will be in Knowsley, 5 in Holton and 5 in St Helens as well. So really looking forward to pressing on with this procurement and then rolling those out across the region.
Any comments on item 20? No, can we therefore agree the recommendations on page 321, please? Item 21, we haven't received any public question time, applications, submissions rather, and on page, on item 22.
Yeah, that's correct. No public questions or no petitions or statements.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to part 2 then of the agenda, and it's recommended that due to the content of the next report, that it's considered as exempt in the absence of the press and public. Then can I therefore ask for someone to move the resolution for these reasons set out in the agenda? Second. Thank you. The Combined Authority has agreed that the next item will be considered in the absence of the press and public due to the information that they contain. Can I therefore ask that anyone sat in the public gallery and those attending remotely now leave the meeting whilst these items are considered, and can all filming cease? The minutes of 1